This is a fanboy moment for me. I know. But, as a guy who likes to read and I read your stuff, I'm fascinated. So, Wright, thanks for doing this. And we're sitting upstairs at Bluray in downtown Oxford. You're like the most, when I read you, like I can hear like this southernness.
Well, it's funny. I mean, one, the place named after Bluray. My father, who loved to play Bluray, it was in a card game, and he refused.
I'm from South Louisiana.
Well, then you understand. Yeah. So he refused to teach me because he was like, you can lose a lot of money playing Bluray. Yeah. So I feel like this is the closest.
Explain to our listeners who aren't from South Louisiana or the South, what is Bluray?
Bluray is a hybrid sort of mix of spades, hearts, and poker that the pot starts small but escalates so rapidly that you can start off playing for what you think are really low stakes, and they get very high very quickly.
It's a perfect South Louisiana game because it's kind of made up as it goes along. And
it's like Tonk. Michael Jordan loves to play Tonk.
Right.
I mean, there are these games, just don't. It's like don't play Tonk with Michael Jordan.
So, all right, let's go throw right into it. So, your writing, your ability to take a concept, a person, a personality, and see it from a whole different perspective is fascinating to me. Like, you're just not reporting. You're not just doing columns. You're diving into people's soul.
Well, I spend a lot of time with people. And so, I mean, that's the trick, is you're just around and around and around and around. I mean, in some ways, as you know, the interview is the single least efficient way of gathering information in the world. And so when you're just around, that's very, very helpful. And so, one, that's a luxury, I get it, but I just try to be around as much as possible. And I also, you want to make big lives small. I mean, there's this great John Steinbeck quote that I love where he talks about how the only story that'll really last is one that's about the hearer. And so, like the biggest mistake somebody makes for the college newspaper, if you read the college newspaper, is that every feature story is about, like, the blind one-legged wrestler. Mm-hmm. And it's because when you first start, you think, an interesting story is about the freak or about the unusual. But what I really find is, like, the really interesting stories that appeal to people are when you sort of get past the fame and everything and deal with someone just as an exceptionally driven human being who is otherwise, except for that drive, dealing with the same things that everyone else is dealing with. And so it becomes less a story about the singular human being named Michael Jordan, for instance, and more of a story about how everybody is scared of dying. And everyone.
How do you find that?
Well, one, it's there usually, unless someone's like a true insane narcissist. Mm-hmm. I mean, most people are genuine. Most people.
You can find it.
Yeah, most people are genuine. Most people do the same thing or worried about
because Michael Jordan's was mortality. Right?
It is.
Athletic mortality.
Athletic mortality and then actual mortality. And like very much the idea that, like, if a coach ever said, like, what would you say to my team? Like, if a parent ever said to me, I have a son or a daughter who's a star, I would just be like, don't ever mention sports to them. Because, when you see the people who are really great, you see – even Tiger Woods' dad, who got a reputation, I think he was sort of unfairly cast along with Richard Williams.
Yeah.
But, like, Tiger Woods' dad was like, if you don't make grades, you don't play golf. Mm-hmm. And, I think that what you see over and over again, for instance, with Michael Jordan, his father, James Jordan, was, I think the best way to say this, if you went to high school with Michael Jordan, he was Mike. You knew him as Mike. He didn't become Michael Jordan until he got famous. So there's this great John Updike quote, like, the mask eats the face. And, like, there's a Catholic philosopher named Thomas Merton who was a priest and a monk. And I read a lot of Thomas Merton. And so, like, one of his big riffs, I just was reading this book, it's all about the difference between the mask you wear and your true self, and how all of our ambitions and everything are us just trying to put clothes on this thing that we think is invisible, but is actually like our true self. And so, like, Michael Jordan, I think, is very aware of the fact that Mike Jordan from Wilmington, North Carolina is dead, and that Michael Jordan killed him. And it happens over and over and over. I'm sure, like, people you played with who really made it big, it's a real struggle to have to put a version of yourself forward for the public to protect you enough to be great at your craft and to protect your sort of family enough to be in this hurricane of pressure and visibility and all of that. You have to put some version of yourself forward that is a stripped down, simplified version of you. And then you just have to really hope you don't actually become that person.
It's so interesting you're saying that, because working with the clients that I work with, we all see them and go, oh, private jets or $100 million contracts. But yet what I find when I meet with them is almost uniform, almost the majority of them have this performance despair of, this isn't why I did it. Like I lost me in that journey.
Well, you always, the easiest thing in the world to do is not keep faith with the 15-year-old you. Like the easiest thing in the world is to forget all the reasons you did it. And like, it's a very natural reaction. When you reach a certain age, you start doing math in your head. Mm-hmm. I need this much money. I need to do this sort of thing. This person's getting that. This person's getting that. I mean, for somebody like Michael Jordan, I think one of the reasons his father was so important to him is that his father, he was like the last person in the world who knew Mike Jordan. And when his dad died, that person was gone forever. I mean, I find it so interesting that Michael Jordan and his father, one of their favorite things to do was to watch Westerns.
Yeah.
I mean, from new stuff like The Unforgiven to like all that John Ford stuff, The Searchers, Stagecoach, Two Mules for Sister Sarah, those old John Wayne movies, all that. And now, like when Jordan, sometimes like if Jordan has to go to China, people who work for him won't fly on his private jet. They'd rather fly United because they don't want 12 hours of Western movies. And when Jordan goes to sleep at night, most of the time he falls asleep to the Western Channel.
Really?
So like he's still chasing, the ghost of his father, but also he's probably, I wonder the degree to which he's chasing that version of himself which no longer exists.
When I read that chapter in your book, that hit me as somebody who's really lonely.
Well, I think greatness is by necessity lonely, because there are all these other people who probably could have been Michael Jordan, who could have been Tom Brady, who could have been whomever, and just weren't willing to give. And so the thing I find about people who are really accomplished, whether it's an athlete or an artist or somebody who endures to get to the top of something and sacrifices all sorts of relationships and friendships, and you have to let people go along the way, and you have to be just myopically focused on your thing, and at some point all of that's over, and then I think it's only normal you have to make an accounting of it. You're like,
kind of end up like Leona Hemsley,
just alone
in your mansion with your dog.
Well, I mean, what's like Sunset Boulevard is real. I mean, that's it's. But I think a lot of people, like Jordan's a very smart guy and is very thoughtful about all of this. I mean, I saw him a couple of years after the story ran, and he seemed like a different person.
Really?
He seemed really.
Is that because of his new wife?
And I think she's.
You gave a lot of credit to her, as you could see it starting to mold him.
But I think she's part of probably a constellation of things. He's done a lot of work on himself, probably, and is coming to terms with what you do when you used to be Michael Jordan. I mean, I talk about LSU earlier. I mean, I spent a decent amount of time with Billy Cannon.
We were talking about him on the way.
And it was really interesting to me because Billy spent so long in exile because he was so ashamed of what he'd done, and he thought that no one else wanted to see him, even though everyone wanted to see him. And he was sort of living in a prison of his own invention. And I thought that was terribly sad. I mean, I was sitting with him in Angola. We were at the prison rodeo at the warden's house.
Which, for people who are listening to this, Angola is
it's
the worst of the worst.
And I was you tell me what this means. I was at the warden's house, Burl Cain, and I asked how he was doing, and this is what he said. And I'm still not really sure what it means. I'm like, how you doing, Warden? And he said, everything peaches but the can, chicken but the feet. And I'm like, well, I guess that means you're doing good, but I'm not really sure why it means that. Yeah. So anyway, I was standing there with Billy Cannon. Some LSU fan spotted him and comes across this little reception at the warden's house and says, "Are you Billy Cannon?" And I'll never forget, Billy Cannon looked at him and says, "Well, I'm what's left of him."
Really?
And it's interesting how –
and just for our listeners, Billy Cannon was a 1958 Heisman Trophy winner, became an orthodontist in Baton Rouge, and then got arrested for
counterfeiting money that he was then burying in like 48 quart got coolers in his backyard.
Yeah. And didn't need the money.
No.
Really? I mean, it just was
pathological. I mean,
he's had some history.
Well, and also, like, again, though, what do you do when the mask eats the face? Yeah. I mean, like, in some ways, Billy became you've seen that movie. I mean, he became that character in that movie.
Yeah, the Gray Ghost.
Yeah, people are like stunned that there is.
So what is that old book, The Dorian Gray?
Oh yeah, no, it's exactly like that. I mean, like but I loved Billy. I remember when Leonard Fournette was having that crazy great season, I called Billy, and Billy was very directly telling me that I needed to be nice to Leonard because Leonard and his family had no idea what was happening to them and the scale of the thing that was to come next. Like Billy was very protective over someone he saw being blown up into this megastar almost overnight. It was just interesting that even at that age, Billy knew, like, this is dangerous territory that people are stepping into.
So have you always been able to, because I'm fascinated by your journey to where you are. Like, it's almost like I listen to, I don't want to say a satirist, but like I hear that a little bit when you write. Like, satire. It's not really satire. It's more like you have this ability to tap into the human experience that the average writer just gives facts. But I'm trying
to. You want to walk a mile in somebody's shoes.
Okay,
for sure.
Okay.
I mean, I want to say think of the least pompous way of saying this. It's. I want to be there long enough and ask enough questions where what you're reading is as accurate a reflection as another human being can get of that person's exterior and interior life, both through their perspective and through the perspective of other people watching them, as opposed to just sort of rolling in and saying, well, this is what I think about someone.
All right, so I'm going to be the psychologist for a minute.
Yeah.
Is that a reflection of you at some point? Of like you, like the journey and the success that you've had? I'm not trying to
No. It's interesting.
I'm fascinated.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think there are a lot of things that are probably deeply rooted, but I think that's just, I've always those are the stories. I think it's much more it's much more external than that, because those are sort of the stories that I read and admired. And I was like, oh, well,
those caught your attention.
I was like, well, that's really interesting, because like I think everybody has a story they tell about themselves, and then there's a story other people tell about them. And I think that those things are almost never the same, and I don't think necessarily one of them is more true than the other. I think actually the truth lies in the interplay between them, and I don't think it's right down the middle. I think it probably moves. I mean, for instance, I grew up working on a farm, and my family farms, and long ass days in Mississippi in the summer when it's hot like this outside. And I find that part of my biography a reflection of the work of the first 5 or 6 years of my career in this business, where it was like there were lots of other more talented, decorated people getting chances, and I sort of was like, I need to put my nose down and grind. Now, that being said, my father was a trial lawyer, and my mother was a high school creative writing teacher. And so it would be very easy for you to just come in and do some very basic reporting and tell that story. Now, those are very different biographies of the same person, and both of those things are true. Now, I think the interesting part is trying to examine why I'm in the middle of those. Like, if you were going to write a profile, that's where the interesting stuff lives.
But trial attorneys telling a story too.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And so, both of these things speak to each other in a way. And why am I identifying with this and not with this? And has that always been true? So, like, that's where you would really want to start.
Where do you get? This is a really bad question. I apologize. Where do you get the skill though to write like that? I mean, do you believe we can go to like looking at a Michael Jordan? Is it born? Is it?
Nothing's born. I don't think. I mean, maybe Picasso was born, but I think.
Or Shaq was born 7'1".
Yeah, but like writing or basketball or football, at a certain level, it's craft. I mean, the NBA are not the best athletes with a basketball hand in their world. In the world, they are the best athletes with a basketball in their hand who also had the wherewithal to maximize that gift. There are probably a lot of gifts that don't get maximized. And I think that, I always say we're building tables, we're not painting paintings. That this is a craft, not an art. And that, it's learned. I mean, you write a lot of bad stories.
Yeah.
I'm really glad that a lot of this stuff's not on the internet. I mean, my friends and I always joke about the worst things we've ever written, just really bad, cheesy lines. And I'm like, thank God that's not on the internet. But it's, it's repetition. I mean, it's like anything, man. It's like the 10,000 hours. You just keep doing it. So when
you came out of school at Missouri, you didn't want to go to Ole Miss. Had to get out of the region.
It sort of felt like everybody from my high school was going to Ole Miss or State, and it sort of felt like it'd be 13th grade.
Yeah.
And I also wanted a certain degree of reinvention, and I wanted, a new life or start. New life's the wrong word. I wanted to go fresh into this school to study this thing I wanted to do.
You wanted to be a journalist.
Yeah. I had a neighborhood newspaper.
Is journalist the right word?
Yeah. Yes, I would say that, or reporter. Anything else is pompous.
Okay.
But somebody's like, I'm a storyteller. Get the fuck out of here.
Thank you. Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes, bring it.
Just come on. You're what? I'm a multimedia storyteller. Get the fuck out of my face. Yeah. You could come on.
Please bring it.
Yeah. I'm a crisis mediator. You're a lawyer.
Right.
But anyway, I had a neighborhood newspaper when I was 8.
Huh.
So I've been doing this for a very long time. And I also, I think there's something, like we talked about, I think there's something very interesting between the truth and the lie and the spin. And I don't think that those are, I think the interplay of them has always been interesting to me.
At first, now, when I went back and researched and I was like, oh yeah, I remember you from LSU. I'd been gone by that, but I was reading your stuff. But your Tiger Woods article was probably the finest reporting.
That's kind.
Of a very complex but very sheltered human being.
Yeah.
And working in the golf world where I do, and around those guys, and being around and seeing him, but I don't work with him, but working with guys that do and play with him. His evolution and change of who he is today versus who he was back then.
Yeah.
And you tapped into something there that really spoke to the loss of Dad.
And just you get on a road and you don't even necessarily know why you're on it.
Yeah.
And it brings you lots of wonderful things, but that doesn't change the fact that at some point you have to be like, how did any of this happen?
Yeah. And it struck me that statement when he's in the middle of a tournament, he's about to win, he looks to Stevie and goes, what are we even doing?
Yeah, and I always thought maybe this is generational, but I was really glad I loved watching the Masters.
Yeah.
Because I was just like, oh man, these gutless wonders are not ready for Tiger Woods in his red shirt on Sunday playing like Tiger Woods.
Right.
And he's got the little thing on the driver with the little tiger who has the name. I can't remember the thing, Stan, whatever the thing's name is. And I'm like, these guys they don't know what that is. This is a thing they've never seen. And it was interesting to see, I'm like, I don't know. I've long thought about Tiger that it must be really strange that his kids had never seen him be Tiger Woods.
Yeah.
That they never, I think his oldest, was just barely alive when he won his last major. And his young son definitely has never seen him win a major.
It's true.
And so he said something to somebody, was like, they think I'm a YouTube golfer. Right. So imagine if he hadn't won that tournament, there's some unbridgeable gap in their relationship.
Yeah.
Because how are they supposed to ever actually know the person that every other human being in the world sees their father as?
Yeah.
That feels like...
Is he the greatest outlier in sports we've ever seen?
I don't know. I mean, it's interesting. I also think that there's such a thing as a greatness gene, and that have you ever seen Hunt for Red October?
Mm-hmm.
All right, I love that movie. So when the torpedo misses and now it's just in the water looking for a target, I sort of feel like a lot of people are like that torpedo. And it's the first thing that makes a really loud noise that's going to get their attention. And whether that's Tiger Woods, these CrossFit athletes who I'm writing about right now, I mean, whatever. If Earl Woods would have really been into the opera, Tiger Woods would be at the Met.
Yeah.
And I just think whatever
it's kind of like Nick Saban would be leading a company. Or
whatever he decided to do in that little West Virginia town, Nick Saban would absolutely be doing. I mean, that's a great example. I mean, that just someone who's great at a craft, and who understands what the job is, and most importantly, understands what it isn't.
Who's the favorite person you've ever profiled, or content?
Dan Gable, the old wrestling coach at Iowa, who's a maniac.
Yeah, complete maniac.
Yeah, I mean, I just had this. one of the things for him I had to figure out how to do was take notes in a sauna, because wrestlers take so many saunas. And so I finally figured out a pencil with a torn piece of cardboard is how you do it.
What was interesting, though, is his daughters were so competitive, too.
Don't mess with them.
Oh, man.
No, like them in a suite yelling at the Iowa wrestlers, questioning their manhood.
Yeah. And they don't even play for their dad anymore.
No, they're just in there screaming,
yeah.
St. John. Like
yeah.
you can't even, like, I was looking around like the Gable daughters are for real.
Imagine being married to them.
Oh, I know all their husbands. They're hilarious, but they all sort of look at each other like, but they're hilarious. And that family, I was just in, I had a book event in Iowa City, and like any true shill, I brought Gable with me because Gable packs a crowd in Iowa City.
Oh, yeah.
So there's a huge crowd that I like to pretend was, there are hundreds of people standing room only, clearly for me, not for the fact that the most famous person in the state of Iowa was sitting next to me. But no, it's interesting. And then we all went out afterwards, and the Gable daughters were in rare form.
They just relax?
Oh, they're all hilarious.
Okay.
And Dan is sort of like bumbling, and so Kathy always has to do stuff for him because he can never figure out how stuff works.
Is there a sense there of a lot of those greatness? I think a Tiger kind of socially awkward.
Well, I also think Tiger. What's interesting, and I would love for someone smarter than me to do some sort of study about this, because one, to the best of my knowledge, and I've looked, so if somebody knows about this, please tell me. But I don't think there has been any real academic longitudinal study about the effects of modern fame since the advent of even the internet, much less social media. And I'm talking sports, I'm talking celebrities. And if we are essentially still evolved to live in caves, right, and in tribes and in villages, then the most important thing in the world in that universe is the ability to control your own reputation. So, like, I wonder if to some degree if celebrity is actually medically, psychologically damaging to people because of the way it goes against how hardwired our evolution is. Well, it's just, I just don't think people are ready for it, because I think I spent a lot of time with Johnny Manziel and especially around his family more than Johnny, and it was just very clear that Texas A&M was in no way, and the NCAA especially, was in no way prepared for a professional sports team to have a mega celebrity involved. And there was no mechanism. Like, he really couldn't go to class.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't they wouldn't let him ride on a golf cart. And he, when you're 16 years old, all you want in the entire world is to be famous. And then you get it and you want to give it back and you can't. And I really felt like he was in the process of losing himself. I mean, I remember we went to this honky-tonk in Tyler, Texas, and we walked in, and the bouncer was trying to pick a fight with him in front of me. And I was just like, this must happen every night. And then, 3 times a year he punches the guy. Mm-hmm. That's actually pretty good restraint.
Yeah, exactly.
3 out of, and so you either don't leave the house.
And then you end up isolated and lonely.
And you end up isolated.
Because then the only people like you kind of tapped into with the Jordan piece, and I know with Michael, or with Tiger, is you only get people around you or Messi that give in to every need you want. There's no friction there.
Well, they're also part of the machine, and no one wants to get cut off. And I remember what I was going to say is that, so I would love to read a study about this, which is that when Tiger Woods came along, the only really example of how to market an athlete was Michael Jordan. Mm-hmm. And so they just copied that. And the problem is, and you understand why they did it, but the problem is that Michael is an extreme extrovert. He loves it. You can send him in a room, he could do anything. You could just be like, here are the 15 people in the room, their CEO.
Got it. Yeah.
And loves it and knows what to do. You can give Michael shit and he'll give it back. I mean, super alpha, but also very normal in that way. Mm-hmm. Like, if you've ever been in a locker room, he is immediately recognizable and is a pretty good guy. Tiger is an extreme introvert.
Yep.
And so in some ways, the people around him accidentally created such a strong mask that was so counter to his actual self that I feel like he got lost in there.
Yeah.
I mean, he was not that guy he was in those commercials.
No.
And I think Michael Jordan is that guy.
Yeah.
And so Michael Jordan the marketing and selling of Michael Jordan by Michael Jordan and all of these other people didn't take him as far away from his actual self as Tigers did. And
is that maybe why LeBron is successful today?
Probably. I mean, and I'm not sure I'm not sure it's people going to school on other people. I just think that sometimes these things align.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
He's naturally extroverted.
And so
he's happy being in that scenario.
So the mask is just not as – if I were running a big football team or sports franchise, I mean, well, one, it's easier if your guys have a mask. But also, like, if you're like for the well-being of people, you would want to work really hard to make sure that they had the toolbox to understand that these two people are different and that you need to protect this person.
Your public persona is here. Your private is here.
And it's okay to have a public persona, but understand that that's what it is.
Yeah, it stops there. It's character.
It is. And it's interesting, and I think a lot of people's problem with the media is that all I'm interested in is shattering this, the public persona.
I don't care what happens over here.
I want to get through that and see the actual person. And if you are doing a job, Les Miles told me one time, and I thought this was really, really interesting, that the reason coaches limit media access to players is not that they're worried what the players are going to say. They're worried what people are going to ask, because coaches have – it's so important to manage the inputs. I mean, the inputs into these people's minds and psyches are so much more important than whatever message board, bulletin board material they give out. It's that – you know, the single most corrosive thing to greatness is self-doubt. And if you just have people a question is at its very core dealing with something that happened. Mm-hmm. And it just feels like those are just daggers of self-doubt every single time.
Yeah, let me tell you about every train wreck I've seen
over
the years.
Or you went 2 for 14.
Yeah.
Why was that? And what are you doing now to work on it? That's a very legitimate question if you're covering a basketball team. Mm-hmm. So you shot 2 for 14 from 3-point range tonight or last Saturday. So why did that happen, and what are you doing to make sure it doesn't happen again? I mean, if you're a perfectionist
now you're focused on those 12 you missed.
I remember, when I got off the internet, I got off of social media, and I'm glad – and that's a separate – we can do that next. That's a funny conversation.
Yeah, love to.
It's an Ole Miss fan. But I would get – a story would come out, and I would get 1,200 great job. And then 2 people would say something, and I would find myself hours later almost verbatim. Like you could remember that –
It's like the red mark of our teacher's paper.
No, it's exactly like that. You don't remember the good stuff. I mean, I got off of Twitter. Ole Miss beat Alabama here. I used to have an office right over there on the square. And so it was like the greatest day ever. I mean, like game day was here. I had a bunch of friends in town.
Katy Perry was here?
Yes. I had a huge party the night before at my house where I had all the furniture taken out of my house.
Wow.
And then we had this huge party. And I just remember looking over like, this party's like some out of a movie, because the Bachelorette was there and Bob Ryan, the old sports writer, were there. And they were on my deck at the same time. And I was just like, this is bonkers.
I've made it.
I've made it. I didn't invite either of them.
Oh, really?
No.
They crashed your party?
Yes.
That's awesome.
And so I was like, it was a great, great weekend, and Oxford was going nuts. And then we won, and then we went over, everybody brought the goalpost to the square, and, we were sat down there on my balcony, and, I had a bunch of pizza, and we got like a handle of whiskey and a bunch of beer in a cooler, and we just all sat up there and laughed, and it was just joyous. Now, a couple of days before, game day had announced they were coming to Ole Miss. And so some Ole Miss fan, I cannot think of his name, Blake something, was like, game day's coming to Oxford. Great. We get to hear about Wright Thompson's dead dad. And I just lost my shit. I shouldn't have, but I was just like, I'm going to kill this motherfucker.
Yeah.
Like, this is not some internet. I'm from Clarksdale, Mississippi.
Yeah, I'm taking care of business.
Yeah. And like my buddies were like, let's get in the car right now. And so I just remember thinking, like, so on Sunday it escalated even more. And I'm just I'm hungover, and I'm sitting there, and I'm on the couch. There's an NFL game on. My house is full of people. We beat Alabama, which like never happened when I was growing up.
Right.
And so I'm just sitting there, and I'm thinking, I'm starting to get aggravated because I'm like, why am I even dealing with this? And then the next day, my boss called, which is Chad Millman, and was like, did you threaten to beat someone up on Twitter? And I'm like, yes. And he was like, why would you do that? I told him the story, and he was like, all right, that makes a certain amount of sense, but just you can't do that. And then I was like, you know what, I'm done. Like, I'm not emotionally mature enough to handle this. like me and my buddies were talking about driving to Athens, Georgia, and getting this guy. Because I'm like, you think you're just being funny on the internet, but this has your name on it. Like,
Yeah.
I'm going to get your
You're
address.
not B124.
No, I'm coming to your house.
Right.
And I'm like, this is not good. And
can you? I mean, you saw it. We put up something. Emma put up something a couple weeks ago, and I mean, it kind of pissed some people off, and they start coming after me. He's like, I can't believe a clinical psychologist would say this, and you're about the. And I was like, I mean, it just like I was on an airplane. I mean, I was like, oh my God.
You start vibrating because you're just like, and also like human beings just want people to like them, and then we all think if we could just ever talk to somebody and explain to them why, 100%. Then everybody would get it.
Yes,
and that's never the case,
right?
Because. And then, by the way, now if we want to go really down the rabbit hole, like there's something really scary about the fact that it used to be only the hyper famous had to deal with the corrosive fact of a private and public life. Mm-hmm. Now, every single human being in the world is dealing with that. So basically what we have are 300 million little Lindsay Lohans running around this country. Like everybody, there's something really interesting.
When are you going to write something about human society outside of sport?
Well, every single time I write. I mean, like,
yeah, you do.
But there's something interesting going on that I would like someone smarter than me to figure it out. But like the lack of empathy in all parts of our society and the inability to sort of walk a mile in someone else's shoes has to be related to the fact that everyone has for so long been living two-dimensional, stripped-down 140-character lives that they have become those lives. Like that has got to be – those things have got to be related.
It was funny. My daughter, who's 18, is going through rush right now at Auburn.
Oh, my God.
And my oldest is 20. Now, Auburn is not as bad as Ole Miss, LSU, Georgia, whatever. And we were talking about a friend of hers who's going through rush at Georgia. And she goes, well, that sorority, they got a bunch of Insta-famous girls. And I'm like –
I don't even know what that is.
These girls that have become famous on Instagram.
What? Like
Instagram
really?
famous.
Like college students who have lots of Instagram followers?
Yeah.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah. But it's these girls who, I mean, fashion, at the beach.
That's insane.
Yes.
Oh, that's like at the Fire Festival. They were paying all of the Fire Festival. That's a whole separate thing. I'm so happy that happened to those people. Like, by the way, that's unkind. Speaking of lack of empathy.
There.
No, but I mean, I should be like, oh, that's so bad. Instead, I'm just like, oh, my God.
So do you, like, this skill of you, I mean, just, like, no radio show. I mean, you do radio interview, but you haven't had a radio show. Like, I mean, I feel like we should just, like, put a keg, a tap on your keg and let it pour.
No, I dude.
Or do you get exhausted at the end
that
of the day?
And just the last thing in the world I want is to be more accessible.
Yeah.
Like
do you like kind of being a recluse?
Well, my joke is, like, I just don't want a telephone. Like, life would be great if I didn't have a phone. Yeah. But then you say that, and then,
How do you get your airline tickets?
Well, and also, how do you, when you want to go somewhere to eat, and you don't know how to walk there.
Yeah.
We're not supposed to talk to another human being and ask directions?
No, don't
do
that.
That's crazy.
I always tell my players, when you're walking through an airport, look at somebody and say, hey, and watch how uncomfortable it makes people. If you're walking through Atlanta airport and you walk by and go, hey, they're like, it literally is like you just said, I'm going to kill you.
Well, this is the thing we're talking about. Like, there's something interesting about why we're all so lonely and angry. And because I don't know. That's something that's really interesting to me. Like, because I don't know.
It's increasing.
And I'm hoping, like, someone who's listening to this can just email me. I'm wrightespn@gmail.com. Like, if you've read something about this, please send it to me, because, like, I'm really curious about sort of what people smart people who really think about this think the next 20 years look like. I mean, it's interesting because, like, I could see it happening on my social media before I got rid of it. Just people getting angry and angry about. I'm like, dude, it's football.
I will tell you. I will tell you. My practice doesn't matter what level players play at. I'm seeing about 50% anxiety now. Used to be about 10%. Yeah.
Now, why do you think that is?
The need to be perceived perfect.
But by whom?
By the masses.
And who defines what perfect is?
Merton, and what you're talking about is the mask is 100% correct.
Yeah.
The perception and the projection of what we perceive that we think people want. I think there's three.
And is it that what they think they have to be like those people they see being perfect, or is it much more, or is the pressure more local?
It's all the above.
Okay.
Because what we do, there's two major factors. I think that every human being has three major drives. The drive to become accomplished, the drive to be accepted, and the drive to find stability in our life. Okay?
Oh, that's really interesting.
So I think that we all want accomplishment. We all want to accomplish something. That's the human need. There's a biological basis. The acceptance is also a biological basis, but we want people to like us. Now, what do? We identify with people who are outside of us, and we identify with our insecurities and their strengths.
Well, and the first two things are very closely tied together, and it seems like the third one is something that you do once you've dealt with these two.
Theoretically, yes.
I mean,
and we want stability and predictability. We hate chaos. The economic concerns that we had 10 years ago, a lot of it was about the chaos, not really what was happening.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, my God. I mean, if you want to create chaos, just say the stock market dropped.
Yeah.
It's unpredictability, and so people freak out.
So what do you think is – there have always been star athletes. People always idolized Mickey Mantle. So what's the difference between the way people felt about the 1959 New York Yankees and the way people think today about LeBron James and Kyrie Irving?
Degrees of separation. I think people looked at Mickey Mantle as the mythical creature.
He almost wasn't real.
He wasn't real.
So I didn't have to try to live up to it because it's not real.
Oh, I can't live up to the greatest outfielder to play.
And also just I see it like.
But they didn't know what his real background was.
And you also could never see him.
Never. Now we have such access, and all I got to do.
But it's fake real because like a lot of documentaries you see are produced by the athletes themselves. Their social media things are curated by professionals.
But so were the fake reels back then too.
But that was clearly fake. This is trying to give the illusion that it's real, and therefore that seems like that makes it much more enticing to try to live up to, and yet much more impossible because it is every bit an instrument of myth making as that was.
This is real world fake.
Yes, and this is fake so well done that it looks real.
Yes.
And like
what was that show on the OC or something that was on Warner, like Fox or something, the Orange County or whatever the.
Oh come on! You watched every episode. Don't get on this.
Don't
get on this damn thing and act like you don't know.
I will tell you, it was the Real World. I watched the original Real Worlds. I was all about that. I was a Saved by the Bell guy.
Were you on the Real World?
No.
I wasn't.
Look at me. Look at me. No chance.
No, I looked at your headshot from back in the day.
Yeah. No, I wasn't. But you're right. There was that degree of separation. I mean, Mickey Mantle was.
He wasn't real,
but he was also unbelievably disturbed
and
destructive,
and so convinced he was going to die young.
Yes.
I mean, well, Joe DiMaggio was just never got over being the sort of poor child of an illiterate fisherman.
Correct. And not close to his brother.
Yeah. I mean, look, everybody in some – I spent a lot of time with Ted Williams' family. Do you know Ted Williams – this is unbelievable. Ted Williams' mother lived through his entire professional baseball career. Never once saw him play.
Really?
Her son was the most famous man in America, never went to a game. When she died, he went home. This was like 6 months or a year, I forget now, after he retired. So hits a home run in his last at-bat. Yeah. She's alive, not at the game. She dies. He goes home, pays for the funeral, and then goes to the house, and then I forget, either tears up or burns every family photograph. Now, like, that's not, like that's
bizarre.
It's bizarre. And so when you know his family history, suddenly his kids wanting to freeze him makes sense. Like the thing that was so interesting is that Ted he never really dealt with whatever pain was inside of him until the very end of his life. And some of it was he needed them. And so for the first time in his life, he couldn't be an island alone. And so he got really close to Claudia and John Henry in the last years of his life. They were his caretakers, and he had been like, he'd been one of the world's worst fathers ever. I mean, just hurt people, and everything that ever happened to him, he passed on. And he, at the very end of his life, finally becomes the person that they have set in churches and therapist offices and quiet cars and dark rooms and begged to have. He has become that person in their lives, and then almost immediately he dies.
It's that story about that hospice nurse.
And so now the fact that one of his kids, his older son, his only son, who looks exactly like him, and he wants to freeze his dad, suddenly something crazy like that actually becomes an incredibly logical decision from a very specific angle.
Yeah.
And so, like, I think that, we often don't see what's really happening.
No, we don't.
And so that's really – but the fact that so many people are so full of anxiety, I mean, do you think that's athletes? Do you think that's society?
Everybody. because we never turn off. I think about it biologically and evolutionary.
I mean, shit, I'm on Lexapro. You know, I mean, everyone
it's a
is.
great drug.
Am I the only one in this room?
No.
Everyone in this room's on Lexapro.
So when you were a kid, when your parents were kids, they went to the farm, and at night they turned on the lights or lit the candles, or great-grandparents, and they relaxed at night.
And you could also,
and they told stories.
And you could also, if the neighbors hated you, you didn't know, and if you knew a little bit, you could construct your own elaborate fiction about why it either wasn't happening.
Correct.
Or no one spoke of it, and you could, where you needed to protect yourself enough from things in order to be the star of the own movie about your life.
Now your phone is going off all the time.
I can't imagine being a high school student, because like in high school you got to go home and then all that clicky bullshit stopped. I can't imagine being a high school student.
Now
the ability to text message or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
No. That sounds like a nightmare.
It's nonstop. And now, let's say you're an athlete. Now I get online and I can look and see what one of my contemporaries is doing in California, beating me, because I'm only seeing a glimpse of what they think. And, they're getting 16 offers, and 14 of them may be fake.
And also, the video might be fake. That could have been 100%. The only 90 seconds they worked out that day.
Correct. But the perception, our reality has become so skewed. I think there's a little sense of WALL-E, the movie WALL-E.
Yeah.
We're going that way.
Eva. That movie makes me cry. God, I can't even think of it. That movie's sadder to me than Brian's song. I cry so hard when Wally sees the dead Eva.
Right.
Oh, God, why would you even bring that up? Eva.
I'm getting into your soul.
Eva.
But that's what it is. That's where we're going. And kids don't form those relationships now that we used to.
Kids these days. Have we already gotten to kids these days?
But they don't. You know why? Because I don't have to go to your house and hang out with you. I can hang out in my house in the corner of my bedroom and send a couple text messages, have a relationship, but we don't learn to make that emotional bond.
We always used to laugh that, like, I grew up in the Delta, and you go to parties, and there'd be some dudes in there. Like, what you were going to say to and about people who were present or not present was directly related to the fact that they might come to your house and beat your ass.
Yes.
Like,
you would never say something.
No, the running joke about, like, not having the threat of immediate physical violence, the loss of that in society is good, and 98% of the time. But, like, sometimes you should just be like, really? You just said that?
Yeah.
Like, you would not have said that.
Clay Travis always says, everyone who sends me hate mail wants my autograph when I meet him in person.
Well, I've run into people on the square when I had Twitter. I'm like, well, do you think I'm an idiot? Like, it has your damn picture. Like, people are like, hey, man, how's it going? And I'm like, you motherfucked me 4 days ago. What, do you think I don't recognize you? You think I didn't? That came to my pocket.
Right. Like,
you think I'm, blind?
Right.
That, no. I was in my pocket. I was watching TV. My phone buzzed. I looked at it. Someone said something terrible about me. I looked at their picture. I put it up, and then I saw you.
And you want my autograph?
No one ever wants my autograph.
Come on.
No. Let me just tell you, that's like.
I don't know. I went and picked up a couple copies of your book to sign from Square Books, and I said, "You have Wright Thompson's book?" Oh yeah, he's a celebrity around here.
No, that's not true.
It's exactly what he said.
I paid him to say that.
You did, yeah.
Yeah.
He goes, "Is he even in town, or is he in India right now?" I said, "No, I think he's here. I don't know when the last time he went to India."
I do end up in India sometimes. I was just in Mexico City. I got back day before yesterday. I don't remember.
Wow.
Mexico City's awesome. It's one of my favorite places.
I've never been there.
It's cool. It's really cool.
Who do you want to profile?
Greg Popovich,
really?
Who keeps saying no.
He keeps saying no.
Oh, yeah. He's never going to say yes.
Why?
I don't think he gives a damn.
You don't think he cares?
I think there is.
Can you profile him without being around him?
Not the thing I want to do.
Okay.
Because I honestly think, I don't know. I mean, he's an interesting guy. And just thoughtful about stuff, and I think probably very playful, too. I mean, self-aware.
The article that they wrote about him with the sommeliers, and that was like, I'm giving you this. I'm going to let you have this, but I'm not going to let you have a lot of other stuff.
No, and you know that, I just don't think he's interested, which I really respect.
Yeah. How are you, your career, one piece of advice for people who want to write, who want to create a career, who want to write books, even somebody like me, who I like to write, advice?
Well, I mean, the practical advice is that it's, especially in the beginning, it's much more about structure than words. And so you should think about writing like architecture and where things go and how they build. I mean, I think that all of us have natural storytelling instincts that for some reason when we sit down in front of a keyboard immediately leave our heads. And there's not that much difference between writing a story that runs in a magazine and sitting in this place and telling a story. I mean, there is a strategic parceling out of information to maximize the power of the ending. And on some level, it's not any more complicated than that. I also think that, like, in terms of like how you're, like, all profiles, and I stole this from an old Sports Illustrated writer named Gary Smith. This is way too profound for me to have come up with it. But like all profiles on a certain level deal with the same idea, which is what is the central complication of your life and how on a daily basis do you go about solving it? And so I think like I think that equation applies. I mean, it's almost like A plus B equals C. I mean, it's almost mathematical in that way, and that this is the things I want to know about. Like what is the biggest challenge of someone getting through their day in a way that they feel successful about? And then, you know, what are the roots of that, and what does that look like going forward? And then you've got a story, if that makes sense.
How do you want to leave this industry? What's the mark you want to leave? Or do you even care about
just
that?
rich as fuck with an airplane?
All right.
No, I don't know.
No,
I'm just
dude,
like,
let's bring it.
No, like, you know, what are you talking about?
Yeah. All right.
An island? I don't, you know.
Be careful in today's world talking about airplanes and islands.
Jesus Christ. No, don't even.
Yeah.
Cut. I'm out. What? I mean, under the jail.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a separate conversation. Jesus Christ, that guy.
Yeah.
It's, but, you know, jokes aside, like I do, honestly, I like doing it.
You just like doing it.
I like doing it. I think, and I think this happens for a lot of people, hopefully, is that sort of the rage of ambition at some point burns out. And hopefully at that point, you know, it's like the space shuttle. You got to have those rocket boosters to get you there. But once you're there, you're just sort of in orbit. Mm-hmm. And so I think that like that rage and ambition are those big booster rockets that help you escape the gravitational pull. But like once you're in orbit, I just like doing it. Like I enjoy doing it. I think I'm getting better at doing it. I mean, I'm getting edits back. I probably have them back right now. I'm going to go home on the story. I'm excited about working on them. I feel like there are things I tried with this story that I'd never really successfully pulled off before. So there's things with the voice, and they're different. I mean, I feel like I'm learning and getting better, and I feel like I'm challenged. And I certainly don't ever think it's easy. I mean,
it's not, writing's not easy.
And also, like anything, I mean, the beauty of being a professional athlete is like past success doesn't buy you anything. You still have to go into that batter's box and hit that ball, and the ball doesn't give a shit that you're Mickey Mantle. Mm-mm. And so there's something really interesting about athletes in a way that athletes and musicians, to me, like you have to go prove it. There's that great Bruce Springsteen song, "Prove It All Night." But like you have to go up and prove it in public. I mean, the act of watching a sporting event, it's almost so intimate that you shouldn't be allowed to see it. The amount of work and time and pain and suffering and sacrifice,
destruction,
and just to get there, and then put all of that on the line in front of other people. I mean, I get watching penalty kicks in a big football match, soccer match. I mean, my heart's I'm like, you shouldn't even be able to watch this on television. Watch real suffering like this. Like this shouldn't be, like this is crazy. And so like live sports at a very high level to me, there's something beautiful about what they do. You know, like it's like the line from Death of a Salesman, attention should be paid. Like attention should be paid. Like this is a very hard thing. I don't know. I'm sort of in awe of the ability to do it because it doesn't, ball don't lie. It doesn't care that you're LeBron James. You actually have to go out there and make that shot, and that's fascinating to me.
Thank you for doing this.
Oh, anytime.
Thanks for educating me.
No, come on, no, this was great.
Awesome. Thank you.